believing in yourself is one of the hardest things a human being will ever do. I think it's easier to believe in somebody else than to actually believe that you can do something. And I think that is probably because of the people you've probably kept around you or the way that you grew up. I'm sorry, I just keep referring to the way that we grew up because that actually forms the kind of person that you are. If you grew up and you were never told that you can make it and that the sky is the limit, and all you knew is that you need to study, finish studying, go and make the buck, then believing in yourself is not an easy thing. But the most important thing that I'm learning to remind myself about every day is that there's only one me in this world. And other people's opinions, whether I fail or I make it, there's only one me, and other people's opinions should not take precedence over what I believe I want. So that kind of wiring yourself or wiring yourself in thinking, it influences what you do when fear comes and knocks at your door. Fear comes and knocks at your door. Open the door. Hello, fear. I acknowledge you. But listen, I have a life to live because there is no other person who is as amazing, coded DNA-wise like me, and coming into this world with everything that I have. So I will acknowledge the fact that I will be fearful before something huge happens. But as much as that is said, I still have to do my bit on earth. If it means I have to speak publicly, if it means I'm writing an exam, if it means I'm helping others discover who they are, I will do it, because actually believing in yourself is living your truth. And when you live your truth, you don't have to need other people to believe in your truth, because it comes from within. So those are some of the factors that we need to be aware of. That self-doubt also comes when we are working from outside of who we are. When we work from the inside out, self-belief can be built up better, because you know that you are drawing from a source that you are in authority of. But if you're trying to be somebody that you are not, you will probably experience repetitive and indefinite failure, because it's not easy to be something you are not. But if I'm standing here and I'm talking to you guys, I'm talking from a place of experience, I'm talking from a place of love, and I'm talking from a place of, as much as I may feel nervous, it's okay, but you know what? I'm telling everybody what is coming from within. So I think the first part that is going to help you to get rid of self-doubt is to start working from inside out rather than from outside in. My name is Lihle Qulu. In fact, my full name is Lihle Qulu. And my nickname is Lee. I come from a small township called Lamondville. I identify myself as a lot of things. But the first and foremost is that I identify myself as somebody who's an embodiment of love. I believe that I was created in love, and that everything that comes out of me or that I do is coming from this source of love. And the source of love for me manifests itself in the form of being bubbly, always being positive, being kind to others. Even when I'm irritated, I try to not be irritated in a way that is going to break a person. And if I do feel that I've done that, I do try to go back and say, listen, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be that harsh. So I think for me, that is how I identify myself with, that I'm a free spirit. Academically, I would identify myself as a researcher. I enjoy the area of research, of neuroscience. and I also lecture at the university. And I really enjoy lecturing. I think it's one of those things that you feel like you come alive and you meet your purpose every time you speak in public, whether it's speaking to kids and encouraging them, or it's actually giving a lecture on the human body or the human brain. I just come alive whenever I interact with people. So I can also say that part of my identity is actually my love for people and my love for research. I love research. With neuroscience, we study the brain and we look at the changes that happen in the brain, and we look at those changes in the behavior that is exhibited by a person, or sometimes we can say we're looking at it using animal models. But that is the basic part of neuroscience, is to identify and to understand the changes that happen in the human brain, whether they are a disease, whether they are a disorder, whether they are environmental changes, whatever it is, we look at it and we try to see how does it exhibit itself in behavior, and what are the changes that happen molecular in the tissue. I went to Fayetteville Secondary School, which is in Wentworth, near the oil refinery engine, and I studied physics, maths, biology at the time, and Afrikaans and English. I did those subjects, and we came from a very, I wouldn't say that we were poor, but we had financial challenges because it was my big sister who looked after us. And my dad was not necessarily around at that time, and it was just me, my mother, and my sisters. So the financial burden that comes with having a free and happy life in high school there were a bit of challenges. There wasn't enough money, but we made it through. So I went to that high school, and to be honest, guys, to really be honest, whenever my mother asked me if I'm going to be anything when I finish high school, I used to tell her that I'm going to be a street sweeper, simply because I could not think of myself doing anything outside of being maybe a domestic worker or a teller in a supermarket, because everybody in my neighborhood was doing more or less those type of jobs, simply because we're coming from families that didn't have money, so you couldn't really dream outside of what you saw. And I finished high school, and then my dad called me the day that the matric results came out. And I must also be honest, I didn't have glamorous matric results. I got what they called school leaving, or they used to call it US, passing US, which means you just made it out. I think today they call it a diploma. It's not even a bachelor. I don't know if it's bachelor or diploma, but one of those standard basic, like you just made it out. And then my dad called and he said, you need to come to university. And I wasn't sure what that means, simply because for me, university was something that kids who had parents that work spoke about. And I knew I was not part of that pattern. I was not tailor-made for university. But my dad said I must come. So I went to him, and I remember we went to the university, and he said I must think about what I want to do. And I remember that the smart guys at school, they used to speak about biochemistry. And then I thought, okay, let's see, if this biochemistry has maths, I'm not going to take it, because I didn't like maths. Maybe my maths teacher was very discouraging. And my chemistry teacher, though, was very good. And I got excited when I did chemistry and physics. So I thought I can take something with chemistry. So I went for this biochemistry, and I screened the modules, and I realized it doesn't have any maths. And then I decided, like that, it was like just pulling a rabbit out of a hat. I said, I'm going to do biochemistry. And I remember the dean of the school at that time, he said to me, if you didn't do well in high school, what makes you think you're going to make it with this degree, because it's tougher than high school? And this was an Afrikaner man. And I looked at him and I said, you know what, even if I was going to fail, I'm now going to pass just to prove a point to you. And I did. I proved the point. Maybe I'm very good at proving points, but that's how I got to my career. There was no huge reasoning behind and sparks and this ambition, I want to conquer the world. No, it was just, again, maybe energy that I was exerting, pulling me to my purpose, and biochemistry found me at the time. After I did biochem, I completed it with a lot of challenges, obviously, from trying to absorb the environment of being in tertiary and trying to make sure that I stay focused, and obviously not being able to stay focused as much as I should have because I was popular and I had friends and there was partying and all of that. But I had to always bring myself back into the ground of, you need to be serious, you know what kind of family you come from, and you can't, lose your ground here. So I finished biochem, and biochemistry actually was just the study of the different pathways that make up the human being. I don't know if I'm putting it properly, but it's just studying the biochemical pathways that assist an organ and the human body to function holistically as it does. So after I did biochemistry, I went and I taught because I couldn't find a job that I wanted. I wanted to work maybe at SAP or Unilever. But then after that, after biochemistry, then I decided a couple of years later that I want to actually do another degree. I wanted to continue and now study the brain, and then I registered for an honors in medical sciences, and I started doing research as part of my honors in neuroscience. And after I did the honors degree, I then decided to do a master's degree and a PhD. All of these degrees were me doing research and understanding a certain aspect of the human brain and its behavior, and how the disease, for example, that I was studying manifests itself in the brain, and how it actually also manifests itself in behavior, and all of those changes that actually happen, that at the end of the day we can say this is a certain disorder and this is how the disorder happens and this is how we can possibly treat it. So this is what I did when I did my master's as well as my PhD. And after I did my PhD, then that's when I received the title doctor, and that's how I'm called a neuroscientist. I did my undergrad in biochemistry, and some of the courses that we did in biochemistry included metabolism, enzymology, animal physiology, human physiology, sports science, and sports physiology. I did this degree over a space of about 3 years. And some of the challenges that I actually faced while I was doing my degree is that high school is very different from tertiary. When you get to tertiary, it's like you are being preordained to becoming an adult. And so you need to have good time management. You need to be able to spend your money wisely. You need to be able to account for your time and for everything that you are doing at the university. And I found that so challenging because there's this amount of freedom that you receive, but at the same time, the freedom is not really as free as you think, because it needs you to be accountable to what you are doing. And also, I found financial challenges because I didn't come from a background where we had good access to money. But that was overcame by receiving a bursary. I got a bursary from the United States, and this bursary would give me money to pay for my food and to also pay for my accommodation and everything that I needed. So that really boosted my academic performance. I can really say that if somebody has a good financial support, it does improve their academic performance. So those are actually the challenges that I faced while I was doing my undergrad. But I also found that if you actually focus and you tell yourself that you can do something, it is doable, because here I am with my undergraduate, with my high school marks, which were very poor. I still was able to actually make it with an average of over 65%. So that was an achievement for me. So after I did the biochemistry degree, I then did a medical science degree. Oh, actually not degree, a medical science honors degree. Medical science honors degree is actually a degree that assisted me to be able to specialize in neuroscience, because it was a merger of physiology and pathophysiology. So what is physiology? Physiology is actually the human body. How does the human body function? The different systems that the human body has, from the nervous system to the cardiovascular to respiratory to reproductive. You go through that in the medical science honors degree, and then this is now merged with the diseases. When we say pathophysiology, it is now the pathologies that can attack these systems and then lead to a disease. And I studied that, and then after you do these modules, the physiology and pathophysiology as well as techniques, you then are given a chance to do a small project, a research project. And this research project, I decided to understand the pathophysiology of Parkinson's disease, which is a motor disorder, and I wanted to see if this motor disorder could be treated using nicotine. And this was done in an animal model. And then after I finished my honors, I then decided I'm going to do my master's. I completely changed the topic. My master's was by research, not by coursework. You can't do a master's where you do a coursework and then research, or you can do a master's that is just full research. So in my master's, I decided to just do full research and try to understand what are the changes that happen to the brain of an offspring that was exposed to stress during pregnancy, and what happens when this offspring is now exposed to infections such as gastroenteritis, ear infection. These are common infections that happen during the early life of a child, and these infections can lead to convulsions, which are known as febrile seizures. So I studied this, and I wanted to understand whether the changes that happen in the brain, does it actually affect the learning and memory of the offspring after it has been born. And then I completed my master's by publication. The work that I did for my master's was published in an international journal, and I got a cum laude for my master's. But guess what? All of that happened under the most intense stress and suffering and pain. It was the most painful 2 years of my life, doing your master's, but also the most successful, I can say, because I got a publication, I got a scholarship of a lot of money, and I also got a cum laude for my master's. So maybe we can say that stress can perpetuate one to succeed if you use it as a platform for success. Then after that, I decided to not graduate for my master's, but to convert it into a PhD, where I continued with the study of febrile seizures, and then I used Rus charendensis, which is also known as cercia. It is a bark of a plant that is known to have antioxidants and anti-inflammatory effects. We wanted to see if we can treat these febrile seizures with this treatment. And we looked at that, and part of it, I went to Canada. I visited the Hodgkin's Brain Institute, and I continued to try and understand the different modes of action and how we can actually do this model of febrile seizures. I came back to South Africa, and then I put up my thesis, and I completed my PhD. Well, for PhD, you don't have a grade. You don't get cum laude or summa cum laude. You just pass. That is already an achievement, because there is no other degree in the whole world that is beyond a PhD. So if you actually want to specialize in neuroscience, South Africa does not particularly have a neuroscience degree, although other parts of the world do have a degree that is just for neuroscience. But here in South Africa, what you do is you can study a degree. Do a degree, for example, you can be coming from the background of pharmacy, you can be coming from a background of medicine, Bachelor of Medicine, or a background of medical sciences, where you have had the access to understand the human body, and you have also studied the nervous system, because it's important to have studied the nervous system. And then when you start doing your master's and your PhD, that is where you then say, I'm now going to focus on understanding a certain part of the brain and studying a certain part of the brain and the diseases that affect that part of the brain, and then coming to the conclusion that I, as an individual, I am adding this information to the greater knowledge of the world. Now, let me also add one more thing. When you do a PhD or you do a master's, it means you have added knowledge to the rest of the world that was not there before you decided to do that particular research. So this is why a PhD as well as a master's are degrees that are actually important for us to do, because we add to the knowledge of whatever study we are specializing in, and we tell the rest of the world, listen, I as Lihle or I as Noguthula, I have added knowledge to the rest of the world, because these are novel findings, these are new findings that I came up with. My career is a very short journey. I started teaching in Lamontville High School after I finished my biochemistry degree. And in Lamontville High School, I was teaching life sciences, and I was also teaching English to between grade 8 to grade 12. I then realized that as much as I enjoyed teaching the students, and I really came alive when I was interacting with my students, but then I realized that I actually want to grow more in my career, which was biochemistry. But then of course I ended up being a neuroscientist. And then I decided that actually I'm going to go to university, as already explained. Then when I got to university, I got a post as an academic development officer, an ADO, where I actually used my teaching experience to tutor students in human physiology, and also to be an intermediate between the lecturers as well as the students, because I had the understanding of both sides. So I would assist with their academic performance, but I would also assist them with their social performance. And this always reminds me of the saying that says, do not despise humble beginnings, because there are experiences in our lives that may seem as if they're not making sense, but actually they are building you up for where you are going. So it's every experience that you receive, you need to treat it as if it was the arrival of your big day. And then when I finished my master's, I then got offered a post as an academic development lecturer. This was a position of being able to lecture and have students who are doing research, but who are probably like at an honors level. So I was able to supervise postgraduate students and also lecture undergraduate students whilst I was doing my PhD. This was preparing me to become a full academic researcher at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So while I was studying my PhD, I was this academic developmental lecturer. Then I completed my PhD and I decided to actually go to Germany and try to expand my knowledge and research. And that is where I came back with the study or the research, which is trying to understand sexual violence and why are men sexually violent, which is something that our country is actually having a massive issue with at the moment. I then came back with that research topic, and I've now implemented it in my own lab. And we also want to actually implement this research from a social perspective, with working with actual individuals who have raped in the society. I also teach at this point undergraduate students, the nurses, the allied health workers such as pharmacy, occupational therapy. I teach them all. Human physiology. I also teach medical students, particularly, if I can call it, I would say neuroscience. I teach them on the brain and the chemistry of the brain. But I also have postgraduate students that I supervise. I supervise postgraduate students from honors level right up to PhD, where they receive a research topic. As I've already explained what it means to have to do research. They get a research topic and they carry the research topic out, and I'm there to guide them. So supervision is not exactly like teaching, because teaching is more micro supervision. You are right in their face and you are feeding them information. Whilst when you supervise, you give a student, or the student comes with a title, and they come to say to you, Dr. Qulu, under the research of rape, this is what I want to research. And then you guide them. You make sure that the questions they are asking and how they are asking them, it's actually relevant and it's actually appropriate to the rules of academia internationally, as well as the rules of academia and ethics that the university holds. Even when they get to the point of writing, you are just there to guide them. So I really find my career exciting. I also became a fellow of what we call DRILL, which is developing research leaders in South Africa. I'm part of that. It's like a postdoc. A postdoc is what you do after you have done your PhD. It prepares you to be able to become an independent researcher. So I am a DRILL fellow. It's a program that is actually NIH funded. NIH is a USA research funder. This is an NIH funded program. I'm part of it. It teaches you how to be a good supervisor, teaches you how to do research at its best. It teaches you how to work at a level that is international rather than being just focused on at a national level. And it also improves your leadership skills. So all in all, my career, I would say, is still at an early stage, but I would encourage you guys to watch the space and see how far it goes. Thank you. I see myself as a better, improved version of who I am right now. What that means career-wise, to be honest, I don't know. For me, I have had all these big plans for my life where I say, okay, 2 years time I want to do this, and things just never really work out the way that I had planned. They just work out better than I had planned. So I see myself in 5 years time being a super better version of who I am right now, impacting people's lives even better than I am at the moment, and being accessible, to serve my country, to serve my people, to serve. I'm a servant. I just see myself in 5 years' time being an improved servant. That's it.